Hello friends of YouTube, welcome to another episode of Mr. GM Fan. Well, today I've got a very interesting article that I found in Successful Farming dated December 1963. The title is Continuous Corn, Are We Headed for Trouble? The article was written by their Crops and Soils editor, Lloyd Zeman. So please sit back and enjoy the article. I've got some photos flashing up based on 1963. So enjoy and God bless.
Spread of corn rootworm resistance to some insecticides and the buildup of plant pathogens in the soil indicate that we may be overdoing continuous corn. However, planting corn on the same fields year after year is still the most profitable system for many farmers. Chucking crop rotations for growing nothing but corn on some of our highly fertile land has been continually gaining in popularity over the last 10 years or more. Why? Because corn is the most important feed grain and continuous cropping lets you grow your highest income crop on your best soils every year. And corn yields on fields in continuous corn are often higher now than when fields were in a rotation. I visited 8 farmers recently who have had fields in corn continuously over periods of 7 to 14 years. Average corn yields on these fields increased nearly 40 bushels per acre during the time they had been in corn. Of course, these yields increases are due to heavier application of fertilizer, the use of better hybrids, heavier plant populations, better weed control, minimum tillage practices, and of course, favorable weather. But because good management practices were followed, continuous corn certainly didn't seem to have any adverse effects on yields. Can we continue to grow corn on the same land indefinitely? No one really knows for sure, but some problems are emerging. One of the biggest is resistance or tolerance of western corn rootworms to the chlorinated hydrocarbon soil insecticides such as elderin and heplichlor. The first report of this came in central Nebraska in late summer of 1959. Because corn encourages the buildup of corn rootworms and continuous corn is the most common in south central Nebraska, it seems logical that growing corn on the same ground year after year played a large role in rootworm developing this resistance. Here's why. Adult rootworms lay eggs in cornfields in fall and the eggs overwinter in the soil. Larvae hatch about June and feed on roots of corn. As long as corn is grown each year, the cycle is not broken, and the insect numbers build up unless they can be controlled with insecticide. Susceptible insects are continually weeded out by small doses of insecticide, so only the insects tolerant to insecticide live and multiply. Now, corn rootworm resistance to aldrin and heplichlor has spread across Nebraska, the western third of Iowa, 21 counties in southeastern South Dakota, 8 counties in northern Kansas, and an area in northwest Missouri. Also, one or more cases of tolerance by northern corn rootworms has been reported in Illinois, Minnesota, Ohio, and Wisconsin. Some corn growers in the South Platte Valley of Colorado have complained of tolerance problems, but this hasn't been confirmed. Most of the resistance seemed to occur in fields where corn had been grown for years and generally the same soil insecticide was applied each year. However, second year corn is being hard hit in some areas too. Once the problem occurs, only a new insecticide or growing corn only 1 year in a rotation is likely to keep you out of trouble. In fact, Nebraska even reports some cases of resistance in first year corn. The rootworm problem is so severe that after corn matures, beetles are often attracted to adjacent fields of flowering crops. A major soil pest of peanuts in the southeastern and southern corn rootworm has developed a resistance to the chlorinated hydrocarbons too. In the peanut belt of Virginia, part of North Carolina, and in at least one area of Georgia. Another problem. A plant pathologist at Iowa State has found that cropping to corn increases the fungus problem. The number of soil-borne fungi that causes disease in corn and other grasses is increased. The fungi in continuous corn soil also were found to be more injurious to corn than fungi in soil which other crops were grown. In the above laboratory experiment, crested wheatgrass was seeded in soil taken from the depth of a little more than a foot after 3 years of continuous corn. Just 21 days later, 36% of the plants were diseased. Only 7.5% of the plants were diseased after alfalfa and 4% after bluegrass sod. Fortunately, the same severe disease pattern apparently hasn't occurred under actual field production. Another plant pathologist discovered that the disease potential was high when corn followed corn, but reduced slightly under a crop of soybeans. Somewhat unexpectedly, it increased markedly with the planting of sorghum. Should farmers now growing continuous corn go back to growing corn in rotation? So far, entomologists are keeping pace with insects. Almost as soon as the bug world turns up its nose at one insecticide, the scientists have another ready to take its place. Different types of compounds that are organic phosphate insecticides are doing a relatively good job of controlling rootworms that are resistant to aldrin and heptachlor. Others are being put on the market too. If insects become resistant to these, perhaps other insecticides will be found to do the job one day. Or it may be possible to develop corn hybrids that are resistant to insects. We have made great strides in disease control too. Hybrids resistant to stalk rot and blight are readily available. Although continuous corn favors a buildup of soil-borne disease, it is not a serious threat now. Unless you run into a situation in your area where insects and disease damage corn to the extent that you could make more money growing other crops, you may as well plant corn on your best land every year. We recommend continuous corn on level land adapted to growing this high profit crop. Think twice before putting fields low in organic matter or very rolling land into corn year after year. At least not unless you practice minimum tillage, planting on contours, and do some mulching. Growing continuous corn on this secondary land not only subjects it to erosion, but this added land in continuous corn might only increase the chances that you and your neighbors eventually may have to fight more disease and insect problems. More pointers. Plant high-yielding hybrids that have some built-in disease resistance. Grow a number of varieties of corn, too. By changing your corn planting, you reduce the chance of having your entire crop hit by disease. You lessen pollination hazards and reduce weather risks. Pour on fertilizer and plant thick stands, too. You have to in order to get high money-making yields, and this formula should give enough resistance to maintain the organic matter content of the soil when plowed under. That's going to wrap up this article out of Successful Farming, December 1963. Again, the author of this article is Lloyd E. Zeman. He was the crops and soil editor at Successful Farming. Thanks again for watching and listening, guys. I really appreciate it. Please jot a few comments down if you remember this article or have some of your own stories to share about what was being talked about in 1963 for crop rotation and continuous corn growth. Appreciate it. God bless.